I don't know how much you listen to my show, but like me and Nate talk about like our gardens for at least the first 10 to 15 minutes of every show.
Right.
Yeah, because we're slowly just gravitating to like, dad chat stuff at this point.
That's the way to be now. I don't care about anything else anymore.
It like once you hit a certain age, like when you're online long enough, and fuck it, I'm just gonna say that we started the show. Yeah, we're talking with Eric. How do you pronounce your fucking Twitter name?
Okay, so everyone thinks it's you, but it's Uwe is how you actually say his name. Uwe Boll is the director's name, but it's Uwe Bollocks.
Okay, now I'm in on the joke. I've only been following you for multiple. I knew it was an Uwe Boll. See, now I'm going to be that guy who says that it's Uwe, and everybody's going to hate me at the party more than they already do.
Well, and people will use it as a joke. Like they'll like use it in place of you, and they make jokes about somebody fucking with me on Twitter, and I'm like, that's not how you say it. But I never say it that way. I just let them think that's the way it's pronounced.
It's like when people do the Fox News, but FAUX, and it's like faux news. I don't get it, guys. I understand. I'm from St. Louis, and like we mangle the French language on a regular basis because we were founded by the French, and 300 years of humping up and down the Ozark Mountains, we've just completely butt fucked the French language down around here. But I at least know faux pas. And I have yet to correct my manager whenever he says something is a mute point, because they both do it.
He says it that way.
A mute. It's like he enunciates a mute point. Like he wants me to hear the U, and he wants me. And it's like, and like he's perfectly like I could correct him. Like it's not that big of a deal. But like I didn't do it the first time, and now I've been working there for 6 years now. So it's just like I can never do it, and somebody else might have to tell him. I don't know. I don't care anymore. So Eric, I brought you on the show because you operate inside of an industry that we don't really get to touch on very much because we are a bunch of online weirdos. So mostly we are people that work in like tech, and obviously I get a lot of military. But you're a farmer, and that is an interesting thing to call yourself, because as I was thinking, it was like, well, what kind of questions? What are we going to talk about? What kind of questions are we going to ask? But I mean, the thing is, I don't really know what a farmer is in the year 2021. I know what a farmer is in my history books when they were sod busting across Kansas. I know what a hydroponic farmer is. But what's the farming that you do?
Okay, so it's the farm I'm at. It's all organic vegetables, and there's really okay. When you say you don't know what it's like, you got to understand that there are so many different aspects to what a farm can do. Like I said, we're organic vegetables, but
so and what does that mean?
Well,
what is organic?
You can't use. It's funny because the certification process for that is insanely difficult. Like when you see certified, that's no joke. Like that's the certification process. Like there are so many weird rules with that. Like if somebody were to run a combine on a field that had been run on a field that was non-organic, technically you can call yourself organic, but not certified at that point. And it's for years. It's like if somebody uses a combine, it's like 2 years later that you can finally get certified as certified organic. But the thing is, you have, just in this town alone, there are bull farms, there are dairy farms.
You say, well, I want to say you're in Ohio, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because when you say this town, I just want people to know where you're talking about. You're not in the Bronx or anything like that. Obviously, with our very heartland and Midwest accents.
Well, and I was thinking about it. Yeah, I'm sitting here like I'm having a conversation with you, but realizing that there are a lot of people listening to this who don't know that. So yeah, Ohio, small town, Northwest Ohio, and there are farms here that go by organic without the certification, and just because they don't feel like jumping through all the fucking hoops that come with the certification process. So like they'll go, and the thing is, there are people who I know do it. They'll be like, yeah, we're organic, and they're not at all. Like their stuff is like monstrously big, and they use, GMOs. They use fertilizers. They use things that just ruin the water, but they could just be like, yeah, we're organic, and like they won't get called out on it because they're not saying that they're certified.
So I mean, I could just call my podcast organic, and like nobody's going to do anything.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, legally, I can do that. Cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
As long as I don't. I have not used my podcast combine on anything yet, actually. So it's sitting out back. I got it. We do have a combine in our science center that we get to climb on top of every time we go there. Those things are fucking huge, man.
I was going to say they're fucking monstrous. Like that's farms that have those. I mean, it's not, small farms aren't going to have a combine. That's not something that's mainly for. And here's the other thing too. If you've ever driven through the Midwest and you drive by those just long miles of cornfields, something that you need to keep in mind when you see that is that none of that corn is eaten by humans. Like that shit is all for livestock.
So where's the corn that I'm eating?
There are farms that grow small crop corn, but for the most part, when you see these giant farms that specialize in nothing but corn crop, that is literally for livestock. That's where that is going.
And I am curious though, like, because I do see that, and I follow some farmers, and are we running into a Dust Bowl problem where we've got this monoculture kind of, because like, I'm in Missouri, so you drive through upper Missouri and it's soybean on one side, corn on the other side. And that's all you ever see here. Maybe you'll see maybe there'll be something else, but like you're saying, the big ones that are right next to the highway, sucking up all that great tailpipe gas from people like me driving down Highway 44 or whatever. I mean, are those, I don't know, that's not the food that we're eating, but, is that I guess, I don't know, is that organic?
No, Jesus Christ, no. No, that stuff is fueled by pretty much all of the bad stuff that you can think of. That is getting pumped into that. Like, I mean, I'm sure you're familiar with Monsanto.
Oh, sure.
So
I've heard of them.
Monsanto. I mean, if you ever look into,
is that how? Wait, is that how you pronounce that too?
Yeah,
Monsanto. All right.
Yeah, they're about as bad as it gets.
I always call it Monsanto. It's just what I was going for there.
Well, I guess either one works. Maybe I'm saying it wrong. Like it's not something that I have ever used. So maybe I'm saying it wrong. They do shit like you're talking about those big fields. So you'll have they sued some old farmer into bankruptcy because some of their stuff blew onto his property, and he was mad about this. Like they're so weird about the way they do like their seed collections. I mean, they're really one of the most evil companies on the entire planet, like bar none. The damage that they've done to the planet is you can't quantify it. It is a bad company, and if you ever round up any of the shit that they have their name on, don't buy it. You're just putting money into the worst company on the planet.
Well, what have they done to our planet here?
I mean, pretty much every single terrible chemical that runs into like the groundwater and the rivers, but it's not just that. It's their dirty practices that they do. They are weird about like their seeds that they put out, like you can't reuse them a second year. You have to buy more. People can't save seeds back, and they can absolutely sue you into oblivion for something like that. But I'm sure here's the thing. The story is something I heard a few years ago, and I don't want to say it the wrong way as far as this old farmer goes, but some of their product ended up blowing onto his property, and they basically sued this old working farmer into oblivion, like bankruptcy. And they're just, if you ever look up any of their practices, they're like the what's the word I'm looking for? Like the agricultural mafia is what they are basically. And how they manage to get away with what they get away with. I mean, seriously, this podcast could go on for 4 hours if you started getting into all of the bad things that they have done. But it's right there at your fingertips to find some of the really bad practices that they have pulled over the years.
And that is, because I know that there have been a lot of stories about how, like, small farms and privately owned farms are disappearing. Like, I don't think there's any left inside of the St. Louis area. There used to be, like, kind of out on the outskirts of the county and everything, but there's really nothing here anymore. And I don't know if that's like, has farming become like just too difficult to do, like as a one person, not really a one person operation. Obviously you would hire hands and have, managers and stuff, but is it something that is becoming harder and harder for the average person to do?
Okay. So ultimately what I think it comes down to is at least starting up now. Like there's a farm here, another vegetable farm in this area, that they would be what I would describe as like a mid-sized farm. Like they have plenty of property, they have plenty of land, but they're not some sort of monolith in the area. Now, the reason they're still around is because of, well, again, small town name recognition. People go out there, good business, nice people. But really, at the end of the day, places like that aren't like grandfathered in are pretty much unsustainable. Like a good sized farm that isn't some sort of monstrosity. So what you're going to run into eventually, and are starting to now, is this mix of either a humongous farm that just has acres and acres and does this commercial sort of farming, or very small farms. That small farms can do okay around, like if but you're not, when you're a small farm, you're making enough to get by.
So there's a small farm near me that we go to sometimes for because it's they sometimes have greens, but mostly they're poultry and pork and beef and stuff like that. So they have a nice chunk of land that's kind of tucked away over in Illinois. And I don't know like how big really what they have is, but it's a lot. It's acreage, but like not massive or anything like that. And obviously they're getting by. People come out and they buy from the farm, and I'm sure that they have places that they go to. But so like, I'm just wondering, like, how big is your farm, the one that you work on?
Okay, so 5 to 10 acres is the number I was going to give you as far as what I would consider a small farm. That would be my definition. So 5 to 10 acres would probably be what I would consider to be, like by the definition of a small farm. That's still a ton of land. 5 to 10 acres is still a lot of land. But when you look at the other farm that I'm talking about, and I don't know their exact acreage, but they're probably 30, if I had to make a guess as to what that other one is. But like, again, those ones are getting harder to sustain, I think. It's either big or small as far as farming goes at this point. I feel like mid-sized farms are the thing that are going to become a thing of the past. And with the small farms, again, when you're like the 5 to 10 acres, you're putting out enough to get by through the year. You know what I mean? Like it's not like it used to be, where like the mid-sized farm that I'm talking about, like they're pretty well off of what they've had. But the mainly the way to make a lot of money farming is if you decide you're going to just buy up a shit ton of land, or own a shit ton of land, or you've been grandfathered into a shit ton of land, and you're going to grow hundreds of acres of corn or, soybeans or something that aren't going to be fed to people in the first place and are going to get mass distributed in giant bulk and again, I'm talking, I guess, as far as like vegetables go. When you're talking about, I don't know a shit about like animal stuff. That's not something that I've ever dealt with as far as that goes. Like animal farms,
I know a couple, and I don't get it either, because vegetables don't shit on stuff.
There are chickens out at the farm.
Well, but chickens are at least like it's small poop, and it's useful poop, and chickens themselves are useful.
But they're pretty much just egg layers. That's it. Like
they don't run around and scratch or anything?
Oh no, they do. They do that. Sorry, that too. But they don't get the axe or anything.
Gotcha.
They live a free range life and die a free range life.
But don't they stop like producing and then they live for another like 10 years?
Yeah, and that's fine. Whatever. They don't eat much.
Okay. Every time my wife and I talked about chickens, we talk about that point, and I'm just like, look, I'm not going to just have, like, obviously I live in a city, so I would have like maybe room for about 4 or 6 chickens at the most. Like, I'm not just going to keep like 6 chickens as pets. All right, if they're not useful to me. And then, of course, also when they're outside of their egg laying, they're just like useless as chicken food too. So, and it's just like now you just got a chicken for 10 years. Like, man, they're just like angry animals, though. They're just like birds that can't fly.
You know what? They're not. They kind of get used to, I guess, on the like. Obviously, it's not going to come to a point where like you're going to like hold one and pet it, and name it, and like scratch its chin or anything. But like, they're pretty chill around. They don't get all pissy around people once they've been around enough. They kind of just like, okay, you exist. I realize at this point you're not going to hurt me, so I'll come near you and kind of cluck and make noises. But I'll tell you right now, a neighbor to the farm had pigs a couple of summers. It would get them at the fair. It was to teach his children the value of raising your own meat. He had them be the ones who had to slaughter them. And we would go feed them like leftover crops. Like that was like stuff that we didn't want to like dump in the compost, and like, we'll go feed the pigs. It was always like a fun little trip. Go next door, see the pigs. I'll tell you right now that, and again, this is the hypocrite in me because like I'll eat pork, but like I have this way of like sort of separating my mind from where it came from because I'm a fucking hypocrite. But
because because they're so delicious. Yes, I understand. Continue.
They are smart. They have a ton of personality, and they have the most human eyes. And the first time I got really close to one to feed one, I was like, holy fuck, I can't believe I eat these things. Like they come up and they're like, as soon as you come up, they know what you're coming for. You know what I mean? Like pigs are super. And I know this isn't like, it's not like I'm saying some sort of mind blowing revelation. I think everyone at this point realizes that pigs are pretty smart animals, but
it's hard to like, cause you see the pigs on TV or whatever. And it's hard to imagine them as a dog, like, you know, having that kind of loyalty or having that kind of intelligence.
Yeah. And the thing that really got me was the eyes, cause they literally have like human eyes, and it just, there was something so like weird about looking at them and being like, these things are cool as shit, and being like, wow, someone's gonna like slit their fucking throat here,
and then I'm gonna eat you.
Right, while they like scream and know that something bad is happening. Like it's a really tough thing to. But then that again, like I said, though, I had a, and
that you know what, that is kind of your neighbor saying, no, you have to slaughter your own pig. Like that really does. You gotta get right with yourself on that one. It's like, am I gonna keep eating pig or not? And I'm not gonna tell you one way or the other whether or not you're good or bad, because I fucking eat pig all the time, but I don't think I'd be able to slaughter one either.
I know, and like when I first said that. I was like, everyone listening at home is going to think this dude's a fucking psychopath. But I think I made the point clear as to why he did that by the end, because that's the lesson he's imparting in his kids is like, this is where your food comes from. Deal with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. No, nobody is that close to their food anymore, which, I don't know if that's good or bad. It certainly is a thing though. When we moved into the last house that I bought about 10 years ago, there's a planter out back in the backyard that was made out of cinder blocks, and it was about, I don't know, maybe 2 feet deep or so. And we wanted to get rid of it, just because it kind of boxed in the backyard in a way we didn't like. So I dug it out. But before like we demoed it, I did a pig roast in there. And we got a friend of mine works in, he's culinary. He works as a chef, so he can get a hold of like the good shit that you can't get like when you go to the grocery store. He's like, no, if you need whole pigs, I can get you that. And so he got us 2 whole pigs, small, but basically, and already obviously gutted and cleaned and everything. And there was I don't know, maybe I could, because I certainly did have those pigs in the backyard, taking a hatchet to their spinal columns to break them open so I could properly butterfly them and grill them the next day, and then stabbing them multiple times with a fork so the marinade would get into it properly. Like, there always is, like, there does have to be some level of sadism behind it, but I don't know. We've been eating. I'm a hypocrite too. Like, I know that factory farming is bad, but fucking I love Big Macs. So what do you want to do? Like politically, everybody has their blind spot, and factory farming sometimes is that for me.
Trust me, I eat plenty of shit that I'm like you. I love. Yeah, I get I treat myself to McDonald's like one day a week. I will like let myself eat that shit. You know what I mean? Like I'm going to.
Hell yeah. Yeah, you work out, so you shouldn't be eating that garbage. But you know what? Sometimes you just got a cheat day.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's when it's always cheat day. That's like my treat to myself is of all the fucking things is like I'm gonna go get a double quarter pounder or a Big Mac or some shitty McDonald's thing.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, the thing is, okay, so factory farming, as you said, is a terrible thing that causes all sorts of grief. But me eating
it feeds people.
It does, and that's the catch there. You know, like you can't get by. Like you would not be able to feed the world on small organic farms. Now, the main thing that would help is if everyone got into growing their own food. That would be ultimately what would make a difference. But that's never going to happen. I mean, there's not. First of all, for tons of reasons, that's not one of those like snobby, like if everyone grew their own food, like how the fuck is somebody who lives in like a sidewalk, you know, like a concrete sort of jungle going to
or a high rise or something like that. Yeah. Like, I mean, I set up like, you know, basement hydroponic, but that's not feeding me. That's like mostly experimentation of like, can I grow a cucumber in February? The answer is no.
I was going to say, yeah, the answer is usually no for stuff like that. We get that all the time too. People that are like, well, can't you grow stuff in the winter? And it's like, kind of like you can stuff in the greenhouse. You can grow like small greens that will grow with that limited sunlight, but like putting stuff under grow lights, it doesn't grow. It's the same deal. Like if you've ever tried to, you know, I mean, if you're growing herbs, like people get those little herb gardens and think that like everything works like that. Like you can have the little light over them that you put on your counter. Like, well, there's a lot less energy that goes into growing some dill than there is growing a fucking whole eggplant plant or
an ear of corn. Hey, I got one pepper off of a hydro pepper plant that I had in the basement. It was not a good pepper, but I got one. The cucumber, the problem with the cucumber is it started to climb and there was no light. It was like climbing higher than the light, and then it eventually kind of realized what it did and then died on me. I don't realize what it did. I think it just died.
Yeah. Hey, what did you do?
Right, everything else is like small. I've got like, you know, a head of lettuce, a bit of spinach, and then this like cucumber that's like trying to crawl out of the basement window. Like, oh God, feed me something. The light's not enough.
Well, and you know, okay, here's something I do want to touch on as far as the small farming thing goes too. One thing that I hear a lot of people who like. So first of all, I think the best thing that anyone can do is support your local farmers market, and I say this for a multitude of reasons. The biggest one being this. You hear people who constantly say, and I've heard this a ton, and I just think this is this weird idea for people that don't go to them, that like everything there is like super expensive. But honestly, most of that stuff is competitive or cheaper than what you find at your local grocer.
And that's always like a very relative term about what's expensive or not. Like, yeah, I can get a dozen eggs at the grocery store for like $1.19, but they're not good eggs. They're not like, they don't have the good, like, you know, deep yellow yolk. They have the, like, they're very, like, I get eggs, like, you know, you're supposed to, eggs are so fragile, you gotta drop, like, I gotta almost get the chisel to break open the eggs that I get. And I get those from fucking Aldi, man. Like, that's the good shit right there. But you know, like I said, there's that farm that we also go to, and when we go out there, we pick up eggs and chicken and stuff, just because, like, I know I can go outside and be like, look, all the chickens, they're so happy. I look forward to eating all of you in a week or so.
Well, and yeah, you know, another thing too is I have had this experience with customers at the markets. Okay, so when you go, now obviously people that live in like California and like good grow zones, but people who live in like the Midwest or places that like in the middle of December when you go to Walmart or Kroger and you buy tomatoes or broccoli, you have to understand that shit was cut when it was not even close to ripe, and it ripens in the trucks while it's being delivered. And when you get it, it's this flavorless not flavor. I mean, I don't know. I can't say flavorless.
No, you're right. It's the tomatoes that, like, the winter tomatoes are the ones you cut in, and they're mostly white on the inside.
Yes.
And that's like, and that's what, like, next year, I think I'm going to really, like, I'm going to go, like, we did so much tomato soup this year with all of our tomatoes. And next year, I want to actually get a pressure cooker and I want to start canning stuff because I do like fresh tomatoes throughout the year, but you can't get despite the technology, I still cannot get a good fresh tomato in December in St. Louis. It's 2021, Eric. I do not understand why you farmers are dragging your asses on this, but
inventing a better tomato.
Why the Tamaco, man? Why don't you take care of both my food and my addiction?
Well, I'll tell you right now too is as far as tomatoes go, particularly the absolute best thing in the world is biting into, like, when you're out working on a fucking hot day, it's 100 degrees and you're down picking cherry tomatoes are the best, but picking them,
I fucking hate them so much. You just smell like a tomato plant for like days afterwards,
and your hands get green and you itch. But the reward when you're so like good. Munching on the best time of the year is that, like, first 3, you start to get burned out on them, but like that first 3 weeks that cherry tomatoes and like even slicers or Romas not quite as much. Those are more of like,
yeah, those are too thick. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that's the best time of year. And for me, like the big thing for me that I had this change of heart with was, I've had people that are like, I don't really like tomatoes, but all they've ever had are those shitty, the ones you get at a grocer in December.
Yeah.
But when they have one that's like vine ripened and like they're juicy and flavorful, like there are people that like they won't eat tomatoes outside of the summertime, but that's like they will buy the shit out of them or start growing their own. For me, the big one was cantaloupe. When we started growing cantaloupe, because to me, I never hated cantaloupe. This is like when I talk about like a flavorless mess, I don't necessarily mean that. Like, I'll get broccoli or tomatoes in the winter. They just don't like them as much. They're still good. They're still fine.
Right, and I mean, it's not the 1500s. The spice aisle is like 2 aisles down. I don't got to fight pirates to get some cinnamon. I can touch some stuff up real quick.
But a fresh grown cantaloupe that like has actually ripened like in the field, it's a fucking it is night and day. I cannot believe how good a good cantaloupe can be compared to like the shit that I've always associated cantaloupe with all my life. Like,
yeah, for me, it's peppers, like the bell peppers,
yeah.
and we grew these ones, Lycia peppers. They're like red and they look like a teardrop, kind of like a big teardrop. So we had this big bushy green pepper plant and all these little like red teardrops sticking out. They're about the size of your hand, and man, phenomenal. And it would just go out. Is this one ripe? And it fell off in my hand. Well, I guess I better eat it.
Those sound like the Carmens. Carmens are my
yeah.
I don't fuck with bell peppers. Like Carmens or Italian friars, they're called sometimes. And I shouldn't say I don't fuck with bell peppers, but like when the Carmens come on, that's all I need. Like they're the best. But yeah, they're like the sweetest red pepper you could possibly imagine. Now you got me all depressed because this stuff is like out of season until.
I know this is what I do to like get myself, like I got the Baker Creek like seed catalog that is like 500 something pages of just like all these beautifully pictured things that like I will never grow or never eat, but I am already planning. It's like, yeah, I can grow 6 foot long Chinese beans. That's fine. I'm sure I can find a place for long beans. I can do that.
Well, that's like me with I'll tell you what, man, this year. So at my home, in my garden, like the only thing I grow in my personal garden is hot peppers.
Mm-hmm.
And like I jam packed, it's not even a huge space. And I had like 50 plants in there this year. I mean, I grew them far enough apart, but like I absolutely do not need that much. And I did not take care of them this year. And by the time I went to pick them, they had all been pest damage, which is weird. Pests usually don't fuck with hot peppers, but there were little bug bites all over them. And the thing is, when you said peppers earlier, you reminded me that I took crates of my hot peppers that I picked and took them out to the farm cooler. And I have not touched them. Yes, they're 3 weeks old. And I mean, I've been meaning to process them. I've been meaning to like paste them, jar them, hot sauces. And I am probably at this point just going to cut them and keep the seeds because they're probably mostly ruined now. And I'm really mad at myself.
That'll happen. One of the things that we got was a dehydrator, and that's been phenomenal to, because like I'm not really good at eating vegetables on the fly. Like I kind of have to work my way up to it sometimes because I'm a millennial and we're all broken in the head. When it comes nutritionally. So, I think I need to eat like 12 slices of bread to be healthy. That's what the food pyramid told me, Eric, so don't laugh.
Oh,
12 slices of bread and 4 glasses of milk a day, man.
One piece of advice that I can genuinely give to you or anyone listening, in the winter, when you're shopping for vegetables, your best bet, and I'm not kidding when I say this, is the bags of frozen stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Because that shit is grown it ripens on the vine, and then they freeze it and send it out. It's going to be a little soggy, maybe soggier than like if you were to roast broccoli that you bought at the store, but it's going to taste more like broccoli should taste than what you buy in the quote unquote fresh section.
Yeah, Costco's frozen broccoli bags were always great because also they're frozen, so they last really long too. And that's always like I got a food saver, I got a dehydrator, and then next year I want to get the pressure cooker so I can start canning. Like I'm slowly, when you're not a farmer and you start doing things like this, people start looking at you funny, like, what are you concerned about here? What are you prepping for? And it's like, no, I just want to, like, I think it's interesting. And also, like, I want to, like I said, I have like 6 bags of tomato soup sitting downstairs in my freezer that, like, all during winter, it's just like, ooh, it's 7 degrees outside. I'm going to make, grilled cheese sandwiches and some tomato soup. And it's still fresh because it's, I pulled it off, all of it's pulled off the vine, thrown into the oven, processed, frozen, all within 6 hours of itself. So really can't get any fresher than that.
No, not at all.
And that's one of the, like, next year my wife is telling me, it's like we need to be like more, because I do the same thing. I grow a bunch of hot peppers. Like I got a bunch of Long John cayennes that I just pulled down from drying, and that's really all I have. Like, I did a lot of ornamental peppers this year, honestly, just to see if I could. Which ornamental peppers you can still eat, but they have no flavor, and they're usually just unnecessarily hot.
Right. Well, I'll tell you something to do with your dried peppers. Look up, it's Thai pepper chips. They like flour them. They take the dry ones, and you'll actually rehydrate them. And then they have to be dried first. Anyway, I don't need to explain the whole recipe. Look it up. And they like flour them and then deep fry them and eat them like chips. Now, cayennes are a replacement. Typically, it's like this Japanese bird's eye pepper that they use. The cayennes are close enough that you could use them. Or Thai peppers would work too if you had some Thai peppers. But
they're really skinny. How are you making chips out of these?
Well, that's true, but you have to chop them up a certain way, and they're not when I say chips, they're not like potato chips, like they're small.
Okay.
They're like small chunks of fried
flakes, perhaps. Yeah. Hot pepper flakes. Hey, maybe that's where they come from.
Yeah. Okay, so another thing, when you, without sounding like Michael Shannon when he's screaming at the VFW in Take Shelter, genuinely, if people want to look at you weird for getting into canning and shit, fuck it, let them. Because honestly, I think everyone, without sounding like a doomsday prepper or doomsayer sort of person here, I do think in the coming years, it's going to be extremely important for everyone to know how to preserve foods and grow their own foods and can and do things like this, because
for every prepper that I see online talking about gun specs, and just like, look, a gun's great and like you should definitely have one, but you need seeds and like knowledge on how to save seeds and rotate crops and stuff, because and here's the thing, like, even if you do know all that stuff, you probably will still die in an apocalyptic event, but at least you will make a great salsa before you go.
Oh, dude, I mean, I'm saying this right now, but like I've said a million times before that, like, if you were to make like a doomsday story starring me, like the end of the world just happened, it would last 5 minutes, because it would be me like running my car in the garage and shutting the door, because I don't want to live through that.
It's me being pissed that the atomic explosion didn't take me out in the first place. Now I got to do it.
Yeah, I would have a very short arc character arc in like a post-apocalyptic story, because it would be me like I said, like putting on like Otis Redding in my car and shutting the garage door. Like that would be my story. That would be my character arc.
But feel free to go get the peppers that are in the fridge at the farm. Those are up for grabs in case the apocalypse happens. You can make a great salsa with them, maybe. But really, you just got to save the seeds out of them.
But like, I'm not saying like you don't got to go out and build a fucking doomsday bunker in your backyard. But I think that like knowing how to can and preserve foods is a very important skill and is probably going to become more important in the coming decades.
Right, it's victory gardening, and but like one, self-sufficiency is always great whenever you can do it, but two, yeah, there could like, and I don't like, I hate to talk about this, like, and my listeners who live like on a 9th floor of a high rise is just like, well, I guess I'll just throw myself out the window, but it's I don't know, find a friend or, start learning how to, buy stuff now and can it or something. I don't know. Like it's hard to like have any kind of like, here's what to do in case this thing that probably won't happen happens. But like we've seen what 20 years of decline can do. And, supply chain issues now are mostly like the shit you're getting off of the boat from China. It's not really our food moving around inside of the United States, but also California keeps catching on fire, and that can't be good. That's where a lot of our vegetables come from, so I kind of figured that's bad.
Well, that's like you and I, what was just on Twitter the other day, we were joking around about, when I said I was out walking and it was like 70 degrees outside a week and a half into November.
Right. It's just like, no, this happens sometimes. And like, but did it always? But you know what? I've only been on the earth for 38 years, and really I only remember maybe about half of them. So like it could be a Midwest thing, but then again, also like when I read stuff about, like walking across the frozen Missouri River, like, ooh, I don't think that happens anymore. I don't think that freezes anymore. And I don't know if that's because, industry and dams, and maybe it runs faster and a little bit deeper because of everything, but also it's a touch warmer. But I live in St. Louis, man, so the only thing that's going to happen is suddenly I can grow bananas in my front yard.
And that's the big thing, too, is these grow zones are going to have to... I'm curious as to when they're finally going to change these zones around, because there's all like... They have to soon, because it is not... Granted, it snuck up on me this year. That's another reason that I got behind on my peppers was typically you get your frost. It used to be frost here was like mid-October, first frost. Mm-hmm. And as of like 2 days before Halloween, they were calling for like low 41, 42 at night for like the whole first week of November. And then this cold front blew in. And it was like, oh, actually, it's going to freeze November 1st. So like I had to rush and get shit taken out. And but I mean, even then, November 1st, okay, well, how much later is it going to be next year? Because it literally just keeps coming later every year.
I don't know. Our first, let's see, October was our first frost, but it was a pretty light frost. And my my stuff that I had out was okay. I actually I still have some canola, and I have a rosemary that's surprisingly still alive. But like you said, like the herb gardens, like herbs like that really thrive on being neglected and like accidentally remembered to water like once a week. Like they're like a cactus. You could just kind of leave them alone, and then you're just like, oh shit, I forgot to water it. And then the rosemary's like, yes, give me your fucking neglect. Like that's what when I grew my own dill, that's what it said. And for sure, like as when I took care of the dill, it was not very good. Like it just didn't have that dill flavor. But when I was like, fine, fuck it, I'll let you get wilty, and then maybe I'll spritz some water on you. Phenomenal. Fantastic stuff right there.
Well, that's another thing. So around here, like hot peppers, especially with hot peppers, if we forget to and it's like a dry season and we forget to irrigate them, they get a million times hotter. They get significantly hotter.
I was telling somebody that when they were asking me how to, I grew hot peppers, but they really weren't all that hot. And I said, hot peppers are hot because they're angry. So you need to make them angry. You make them angry by just giving them constant sun. And when they're not water them until their leaves get wilty. And then once you do that, you'll be fine. They'll fuck you up basically. And also I think the other thing is that people put peppers too close to each other. It's like you need at least, if you're not doing 18 inches, you're not going to get any peppers. At least not any good ones.
No, absolutely. And that was why when I said earlier about putting 50 plants in my garden, I had to specify that I'm not a dumbass who's like, yeah, I was putting 6 inches apart. Like, no, they were the standard 18 inches apart. I just managed to like really cram them in there this year. Like my Tetris skills came into play to make sure I got as many peppers in there as I could, and then I didn't fucking touch them.
I'm curious about you doing seed saving. Like, if you're growing, like, are they homogenous? Are they all like the same pepper, or because like I'm just worried about cross-pollination.
Cross-pollination, I know. And here's the thing. Cross-pollination I know is real, but in my heart, I still believe it's a myth because I've saved pepper seeds plenty of times, or different seeds that like grow exactly the same the following year. And like I know I don't fuck within my garden. We don't do it at the farm. Anything with putting, there's ways to do that, like, to avoid cross-pollination, but it's a fucking pain in the ass and it's a lot of work. Like even just in my small garden, one way to do that is putting tea leaves over the little flowers when they pop out. But like, I don't have time for that shit.
Right. Like, honestly, like if I need more heirloom fucking seeds, I'll just order them. It's like $5 a seed pack and I'll get 20 of them.
There's also that.
Yeah. Like, and that's like, I don't save pepper seeds like specifically because of that. And also because every year I want to grow different peppers. Like this year I did like black Hungarians and this, Chinese 5-color ornamental peppers and everything. So it was, I was just all over the place. And also some zebra peppers, which really the zebra comes from the leaves, not from the peppers themselves. But it's all really good stuff, and all I use for them is I when I make pickles, because the other thing I grow a bunch of are cucumbers. So I'll just, make a bunch of pickles, get a big Costco sized thing of vinegar, and go to town. Although I've been like, my wife makes me do that outside because when you're boiling vinegar and hot peppers, that tends to create mace, as it turns out, and people in the house don't like that. So, pro tip.
How was your cucumber season this year? Because it was fucking insane here. Not just like people that came into the farmers markets were like, I have more cucumbers than I know what to do with out of my garden right now. Like,
yeah, I was not getting them fast enough, and I think a big part of it though is where I grow them is right along my garage wall, so it's just hard to get. It's hard to get to them, like I'm that person who's just like, I can't see the future of these plants, so I'm going to plant these little piles of seed in my 6 foot by 6 foot bed, and then I've got this tiny plant and this tiny plant. Look how much room I have. I can put like 7 more plants in here. And then 2 months later happens and I've got to get the machete to go fucking pick a tomato or something. Like we did that this year with the tomatoes because I was like, I use the keyhole gardens. I don't know if you've seen those. Like you get them. I know I sound like I'm advertising for Costco and shit, but they're great. They're like raised beds, but they are 2 feet tall, and they have a composter in them. So you just compost, and the compost can leach out into the dirt. They are a bitch to fill, obviously, because you're talking about like multiple square feet of planter space. But yeah, my wife is like, look, next year, on the 4x4 with the tomatoes, 1 in each corner, nothing else. Because, oh my God. And I have no idea what's going to happen next year. I'm going to be mowing tomato plants down around the tomatoes because so many of the little cherry tomatoes fell off and just got stepped into the ground. So, and I don't even have, the animals don't go back there and eat it. Man, what the fuck?
I always get the renegades. I grew like the weirdest gourd in the entire world a couple of years ago where something had fallen into the dirt out of like where I'd grown squash and pumpkins and stuff in my garden. And I have no idea what it was. It looked like something from it looked like a Cthulhu from Lovecraft. Like it was this really weird looking squash that and it was funny because I put it up with my Halloween decorations because it was so weird looking. But I invented something on accident because you get these renegades though. And I had this year when I was cleaning my garden out, I found a cherry tomato plant that was very thin, but it had some cherry tomatoes on it that I didn't grow cherry tomatoes this year.
The volunteer tomato plants.
Yes, that's the word. Volunteer. Christ, I don't know why I was blanking on it. Volunteer.
Yeah, I got a lot of volunteer fucking mulberry trees around me that I have to. Yeah, fucking the one mulberry tree is great. There's the rest of the neighborhood is fucked now. That and the maple tree that is a block away from me. Yet those fucking helicopters, man. always end up. And then a maple, I don't know if you've ever had to pull maple, like tiny maple trees out, but like when you see them, whatever you see, the taproot is just as long. So the taller they are, the worse they are to drag out.
I have a taproot problem in my garden that's never going away. What I do is I cut them off when they start to pop back out again, and I have no idea what it even was. Because I have a lasagna garden is what I have. The lasagna garden sounds very similar to what you were talking about, but it's a raised bed thing. You layer down, and they call it lasagna garden because you layer down compost, manure, put some plastic down so that weeds don't get through, straw over the top. And then now I got to relayer it with straw. I didn't do it this year, but typically you're supposed to layer straw over the top. And then you basically plant down into the straw. There's like little plugs that you make that you plug directly or you plant directly into. It's good for weeds. As long as you keep up with like the straw on that. But those tap roots have torn the fucking tarp apart that's underneath. So next year I got to like basically redo, but there's a lot of good, years of compost because I take all my leaves every year and I dump them on the garden and let them compost down as much as they can. But yeah,
the last house, I just ran the lawnmower over them. Like it just once the trees were done, I just did one last turn with the lawnmower, and like not even I didn't even I don't gather it up and throw it away. I just mulch it directly into the lawn. Like I hate lawns. I don't give a shit. I cut them because the city tells me I have to, but like beyond that, I don't care. So when it comes to like, oh, does your lawn look like shit? I don't care. Like, but also I know that this is what I'm doing is healthier than what anybody else is doing. Like, hey, I'm going to pay somebody to like take the food off of my lawn and put other food down onto it. That makes no sense to me. I don't know why you would do that, but other than it just looks nice. You talk about the volunteers. I get volunteer sunflowers out of all the bird seed that we have up front, and we had a mystery squash too. And that thing, we had this little squash, and it came up. And I live on I have one of those annoying like hills as a front yard. So it was up at the top, and this little squash popped out, this little squash plant, and we're like, oh, very excited to see what this is. And it like ran a runner down the hill, like a good like 7 feet, but it only gave us one pumpkin, and the squirrels immediately ate it. Like we started to get one pumpkin, and we were really excited, like, oh, it's green. What kind of pumpkin is it? What's it going to turn out to be? And then like we went outside one day, and it was like half eaten. And it's like that was the only pumpkin that we got out of that. It's like, it got watered plenty. It got, cause it got watered with everything else because it was near a garden, but, didn't work out so well. Sad though I do want to do now. I just want to do squash down the front.
Well, so I stopped doing pumpkins in my personal garden because fucking squirrels. I had grown a bunch of really nice ones, and every one of them, when I would go to like, oh, I'm going to pick this one, it's good. And then there'd be like, I'd pick it up and the underside would be like eaten through. And I was like, you fuckers. But I'll tell you, the bane of our existence at the farm is deer. Those motherfuckers, they sneak into the field. And what they do is they like lettuce is what they love to go after. Like we have to cover the lettuce. And if we even forget, which happens to put like at the end of the day, like layer at night, which I'm never out there at night. I live in the city. So, city. I live in the town. I live a few miles from the actual farm. If we forget to put that shit down at night, if I'm not out there that later, they're not like, it just happens sometimes where like Aaron will forget to lay the shit down. And it without fail, you go in and at least half of that lettuce. And what they do is they take big bites out of the center and then leave the rest.
Leave the rest. It's like a child with a chocolate bar. It's just like, I'm gonna take a bite out of 7 of these. Like, would you just eat one? I swear to fucking God.
Like you can't do anything with it. You can't sell it. And then it like bolts in the middle. It's just so annoying. So much lettuce gets lost just like being forgetful when it comes to laying down the like layer of protection that you're supposed to put over the lettuce every night. But that's the only thing they fuck with. Like they don't mess with anything else. Like you never find deer eating. It's always the lettuce that those assholes get.
We'll have to, I'm sure after Nate goes through this, he's going to want to do an episode with you so he can rant about British slugs destroying all of his basil. Nate has a constant war going on with slugs in England. So for me, it's aphids, but aphids are easy to deal with. Slugs are not.
That's what I was just about to say is with basil here, it's aphids. That's aphids. aphids are easy to deal with if you're not doing a lot of stuff. When it's
right. If you don't have, for my garden, it's easy to deal with because it's a little spray bottle of dish soap. Like if it's you who has aphids at the farm, that fucking sucks.
Oh, dude. And then like at the farm too, it's these like spray backpacks that you wear that are like really chintzy and cheaply made. And I have had multiple times where you've got the organic, which I mean, even organic like bug spray is shit you don't want to get on you. And like, I have so many times like over pumped that fucker and it'll just like blast the hose off the back and spray that shit down the back of my pants. Like I cannot tell you how many times that has happened to me.
Just Agent Oranging yourself.
Yeah, I probably can't have kids. I am probably sterile at this point.
I mean, that's just because you post on Twitter though. Like the chemicals have nothing to do with that. That's just your social media habits. Well, Eric, I want to thank you for coming on and talking farming with me. Pimp your podcast.
Yeah. So I have a podcast. It's called Soundtracker, and every week I cover one movie and the soundtrack. And when I say soundtrack, I don't mean like there's obviously like there's score albums, but I'm talking, what during the 90s in particular, there was this boom of original motion picture soundtracks that had a collection of artists. Some of the famous ones being like The Crow, Judgment Night, Batman Forever. But I put together a list between 1990 and 2010 and came up with 1,800. So there's a lot of ground to cover. I'm almost 3 months into it now and have barely scratched the surface of what there is to cover here. And I've had Francis has been on. I've had Will Menaker. I've had Simon Barrett, Dan Beckner. I've been lucky to have had some really great and engaging guests. So
it's a fun concept. And you know what? When you do a political podcast and somebody's like, do you want to watch a movie that you like and then talk about how much you like it? Yes. We did Top Gun, and it's a movie that is not good, but we both love it. So that's what's important.
That's the summary of our episode. A movie that's not great, but we love it. And I think the soundtrack is pretty much the exact same description. Like, it's not necessarily a great soundtrack, but like, I kind of love it.
Yeah. So hopefully, Nate, play us out with Playing with the Boys by Kenny Loggins, the most manliest dude rocking song that we can come across. Follow Eric Uwe Bulox, or however he wants to pronounce it. We'll also have it down there in the...
Okay, I was going to spell it out, but if you're going to have the Twitter handles in the...
Well, see, you said UWE, and I was like, that's a baby sheep, right? So, but you're a vegetable farm. So I thought it was a whole farm thing. But no, you're just making fun of a really bad film director, which is also on brand. It's
not to be that guy, but it's EWE when you're talking about...
See, and this is why I fix computers for tax professionals. Like, if I don't die in the apocalypse, I probably should. So yeah, I'm pretty much fucking useless. So, like, yay, Francis survived. He can grow some salsa. That's about it. All right, everybody. Thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you next week.